Hello Shassos, welcome to another video where we are going to be talking about my new favorite detachment, the Auxiliary Carter. Now, unlike the name, and I think this may have misled a couple of people, this is an extremely strong Tau faction. It utilizes the auxiliaries to get the bonus, and at the list building step, there are a few key things that I think players are going to do wrong, which leads them down the wrong path and feeling like the detachment is bad. But in all of the practice games that I've had, it has felt insanely strong. And I wanted to talk about some of the things that I've found and my view of the biggest winners of this detachment coming out, and some of the things that I think it has genuinely fixed within the Tau Codex that were a little bit lackluster, I felt, in some of the other detachments that relied specifically on ripping stratagems to give you that back. And the big part of this is AP. Now, the reason that I say this and why I think it's such a big deal is actually stemming all the way back from 9th edition, where GW declared that they thought that the game was way too killy, and they lowered not only the strength of weapons, but also the AP of weapons. Now, we also saw targeted reductions in shots and changes to certain other rules, but AP across the board was really felt, and this was compounded when GW changed the way that cover worked, away from the heavy and light cover that we had before, to just benefits of cover, making it much easier to get, much more readily available, and also restricting the things that ignored it. Now, Tau has benefited for the entire edition by having an army rule with the marker-like keyword that basically allows us to universally ignore cover so long as we're playing our game correctly. And this detachment has made me feel so much more killy, to the point where it almost feels like we're back in 9th. And I wanted to talk about a few of the things overlapping there and also show you, because this has been a very common criticism that I have seen, and I think unfairly, that the bonus is too hard for us to get. You've got to jump through a bunch of hoops, you've got to blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that this is the case, and I've never struggled to get the bonus in any of my test games. Yes, I'm yet to play a tournament, but I tend to test my list against players that are very, very competent and either podium tournaments regularly, or at least are always doing well on their particular faction. And one thing that actually kind of stood out to me when I was looking at maybe what's going to happen with these lists, I remember reviewing the list from the World Championship of Warhammer and the meta towards the end of like the pre-Grotmus era, and we were already seeing that people were taking Vespid everywhere. As soon as that unit got its update, it got its rule changed, the 10-man squad got a bunch of extra weapons, we saw that people were diving on that unit to take it. We're already seeing Kroot Carnivores being taken as very, very cheap objective grabbers, and I think maybe the misnomer that people have sort of drummed into their head is that with this detachment, you will only take Kroot, or you will take an enormous amount of them. And that just hasn't been the case with my refinement of list writing. I'm finding that I'm hitting a good place of having some Vespid or Kroot, but my list isn't being overwhelmed by them. It is still a majority Tau, suits, tanks, whatever list, but it has a few of these little pieces in it that are giving me a very, very strong bonus. Another criticism that I'm seeing is that the Kroot just die way too fast. Not if you play them correctly. Using terrain, walls, cover, all these different things in order to only expose them when you need is a very, very big part of it. And I bring this up because within 9 inches invisible to this unit is actually really easy to achieve. And like, you don't have to expose the entire unit to do it. You can have the majority of the unit in cover, nice and safe, using angles on the board, and only really having to expose one model. And notice it doesn't say any model it needs to be visible to. It just says visible to this unit. So there's actually a trick that you can use that I've been using on things like stealth suits and pathfinders for the longest time to get multiple turns of guiding out of them, even though I'm exposing a model. And I want to show you that right now, and then we'll get into the big winners from this detachment in my little list run through. Okay, so we're on TTS, and I just wanted to show you a little example of, we got a bunch of stuff staged up here. There are suits out in the open. Now, just for reference, these suits aren't out in the open doing nothing. This was actually about to be my turn. This is my army. But I wanted to use, there's a nice little staged up position as just an example, where we've got stuff that we want to shoot. We've got stuff that we want to get a bunch of AP bonuses on. And all you have to do with a unit, you can string them out, because a 5 model unit only has to have 1 model within 2 inches coherency. So what I've set up here using maximum coherency is that I've got 1 Kroot Hound on the other side of the wall, and then all of the others are back down here. Now, what this creates is a situation where I can see and am in range of everybody here. And I've just put 9-inch bubbles to represent it. And I want to show you, look at how much coverage we've got on all of these, like 2 different objectives across the board. A single unit of Kroot Hounds is covering almost half the board, and all I have to do is just make sure I've got visibility to them. And this becomes very, very easy, where I can move my Kroot Hound like that. And you can see now, using a single unit, I have 9 inches of coverage this way, which is anything that's on this center objective. And I've got this objective covered, and I've got this objective covered all the way up to here and visible on everything past this wall. Plus, I've got everything forward here covered, and this is all from a 40-point unit. A single 40-point unit is covering this objective, this entirety of No Man's Land, and this right here. So anytime I see somebody saying, nah, all your Kroot are going to be dead in 3 turns, well, no, not if you play correctly. And it's not like the Kroot Hounds can't get where they need to be. They scout 7. Let me turn on deployment zones. This movement here was just a conservative move to have them in the right spot. But even off a 7-inch scout move, you're already inside this building. Move 7 inches, and without an advance, you get all the way up to here. A single unit can cover all the way over here, 9 inches, can cover all the way over here, 9 inches. And all you need is something gets line of sight nice and safe from down here. Remember that your shooting unit doesn't have to be within any specific range. For the AP bonus, you just need line of sight and able to be in range of your weapons. It's the Kroot specifically that need to be in range. And then if my opponent kills this, I've lost 40 points. This is absolutely cracked how easy this is to get the bonus. Now, is there a skill flaw with moving so many models? You can see we've got a lot on the table. Yes, there are quite a few models that you're going to have in your list, because we're not taking a bunch of like crisis suits or whatever. But also, you could just take a bunch of crisis suits, have a few Kroot models, and still be playing a retaliation Carter simplified elite style army with a metric fuck ton of damage. And I'll get into the damage. And you've just got your Kroot models and whatever else that are going to go up and play your objectives and get you the bonus, and all you need is one model to be able to see the enemy unit. Note that it does not say every model needs to be visible. GW have actually gotten kind of good with their specific wording, and although there are flaws within the 40k game at the moment, as a TO that has to interact with all these rules, has to know all this stuff, has to rule on them, has players come up and say, hey, looking at this wording, what do you think? There is actually a very common thread that GW have been writing into their rules, and when something needs to be visible to every model, they specify that. So same thing with our guiding. I only need one stealth suit on the other side of the wall, and that unit can guide for another unit. And I use that all the time, because stealth suits, you shoot at me with incidental fire, I kill off the front dude, and then the other two are behind the wall, safe from any further activations from other units. You actually have to commit to them to kill them. And it's the exact same with this, where I have one model that can see from around a base, from the other side of a wall. All the other models are on the other side, invisible and getting the benefits of cover, unless my opponent can ignore it, obviously. But again, I can't play the game for you. Make sure you know the context of what you're playing into. But there are a lot of very safe, very smart plays that you can make with this. So, to get to it, after the little bit of preamble to set all of this up, what are the big winners? Well, the first is Shadowsun. Now, before getting to her, I need to go over again that these stratagems are amazing. Absolutely amazing. No turn restrictions, and only restrictions of on X unit or be within range of something else, which if you look at all of the Grotmus detachments, we are actually one of the least restricted factions with our new detachment out of almost anybody, which is awesome. We have a few very key standouts. That is, +2 strength to our weapons. Have Shadowsun within range of the firer. Again, your shooting unit doesn't need to be anything but in range of the unit that it wants to shoot. So a Skyray, a Hammerhead, a Riptide, whatever else, they can be at their maximum range, standing next to Shadowsun, get +2 strength on their weapon, and you roll, and on a 5-up, which by the way is 1/3 of the time, you get a CP back. And any of the stratagems that you might use around her, like if let's say a Riptide needs to advance to get to the line of sight that you need, when he makes that advance roll, it's at the start of the move. If he's within range of Shadowsun, you get to roll for that. Move Shadowsun again in range of him, because it only needs to be within that 6-inch aura. That is a 10-inch move. She will be able, even if he rolls a max 6, she has the movement to be in range of him and be in range of the aura. Then when he spends for +2 strength on his weapons, you get to roll for it again if you didn't get it the first time. Now, for anybody who's a little bit newer, you can't, if you gain a CP in this way or by discarding a card, you cannot gain more than 1 CP per turn. So once you're successful, Shadowsun can just go off and do whatever the hell she wants. Like, she's not restricted to being in range of them anymore. That said, she also has, on her data sheet, every time a Tau Empire unit within 6 inches of this model makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. Now, this is very broadly useful, as this is just Tau Empire. Every single unit has the Tau Empire keyword. Now, because it specifies ranged attacks, it's not a good idea to have a following like rampages or anything. That won't benefit them. But this is very, very good for creating a nexus of a base of fire that gets rerolls and gets to reroll CP when you spend the CP within range of her. There is a combo with this as well, by the way, where you pair this with something like Farsight with a bunch of missile pod guys. He spends a stratagem for free, but notice that the command link drone, just down here, I'm going to zoom in on it. Notice the command link drone aura says when targeted with a stratagem, not when you spend a CP. That means that Farsight was targeted with a stratagem. Also, the War Shaper for your Kroot, if you want to give them auto advance 6 to get that bonus, get them in range, get them on an objective, get the sticky going, all that sort of stuff, you can spend at the start of their move. They're within range of Shadowsun. War Shaper makes it free. Then you roll to get a CP back. Imagine spending 0 CP to get 1. Really, really nice. Really nice. I've had the question a couple of times, would I put in an Ethereal? If I'm not going Farsight, an Ethereal can be an option. It's 50 points, sit in Strat Reserve for 3 turns. You still get to farm for the CP at the start of the turn. Look in the rules commentary, units using abilities while in Strategic Reserve. The only place you can't do it is if they're in a transport, and that would be if your Ethereal isn't on a hover drone. But I think that Shadowsun is a great recipient for this detachment. And on top of that, I think it needs to be stated that she has some great weapons. The high energy fusion blasters going to AP5 is a breakpoint that matters against like Lehman Russes and that sort of stuff with the 2-up armor save and no invuln. But she's got a light missile pod, which going from 9th to 10th, lost its AP. Now you get it back. The Fletchet launcher, which I use as a meme to like take fuck you wounds off of an opponent, that's strength 3. But if you get any wounds through, that's now AP1 shooting. AP1 is a lot more relevant than I think a lot of people give it credit for. So the next unit that is a recipient of the auxiliary Carter thumbs up glow up is our beautiful breaches. Now, I have banged on about these guys for a long time. They are the most fuckable data sheet in the entire codex. Like, these guys walking around looking like a snack, jumping into a devilfish, going out and just obliterating some poor fool. If you're able to spend 1 CP, they get strength 8 pulse blasters. Then, because you've got a little Kroot hound on the other side of the wall, just one little boy that can see the unit that you're going to be shooting at, which is very easy to do. Very easy to do. Or a Vespid unit, and it needs to be said, the Vespid, I've been deploying them more aggressively because I can always up and downy them, but I also threaten a 14-inch move, potentially a 6-inch auto advance, or just rolling on a dice. The average is 3.5, so they're going 17.5 inches on like whatever turn you're throwing them. That's an enormous distance. You will get those Vespid in range. This full combo with the Carter Fireblade, you've got the enemy standing in range of an objective marker, which a lot of the time, that's what we send our breaches at. You've got 30 shots, hitting on 2s, assuming stealth suit guiding, which I plug stealth suits into every list that I write. You've got 30 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling once, which is functionally full re-rolls to hit. Then you've got strength 8 pulse blasters, which wound Marines on 2s, wound Terminators on 3s, and wound Dread Knights from Grey Knights on 4s with full rerolls to wound. Then they're AP2. Just from having one little unit, one little Kroot Hound sitting on the other side of the wall going woof woof. What up, motherfucker? This combo only costs you 1 CP and you can do it each turn. I mean, breaches were already amazing. We were seeing them in so many lists in Cao Yon. They were an absolute staple. I love my breaches. I actually feel a little uncomfortable leaving home without my breaches. And these guys being able to do this all for 100 points. Well, realistically, it's 150 for the Fireblade being in there, and you're likely going to take them with the Devilfish, so that then becomes 235 points. But 235 points for that profile? And a lot of people have been like, oh, what does the extra AP matter? You know, breaches were already great on AP1. Why does AP2 matter? Well, one of the big problem children for AP1 shooting, which was our missile pods, it was our breaches, all that sort of stuff, was things like Custodies and Grey Knights. When you go into that matchup, the difference between having somebody save on 3s, which is 2/3 of the time, to then going to 50% of the time, one of the best ways for anybody who's wanting to get into competitive and there's somebody that's problematic in your area that runs Terminators, Custodies, Grey Knights, any of that sort of stuff, like the big durable bricks. Or you got, like, let's say, for example, the Bully Boys Mega Knobs. They are very, very tanky. Anything that's got a 2-up armor save and a 4-up invuln, you want to have them on that 4-up invuln, and you want to have them being shot at with massed shooting. Plasma rifles actually aren't as great as you might think against Terminators, because you lose some of them in the shooting and the wound phase, and then you lose more of them in the save phase. You want to make them roll 30 saves, because 3 of them going through is a dead Terminator. Being on the receiving end of it, it's not nice. And crippling these units, maybe not full killing them off, but taking out a large chunk of them, makes it so that they are very, very uncomfortable, and that big, powerful unit now has a much smaller footprint and damage profile. If you want to beat things with a 2-up armor save, you need to be pumping AP into them. And previously, Montcard, we had to fire 2 units of 1 unit. Very inefficient, especially for a breacher team that has the capability of killing the thing that it's looking at. Cao Yon, we had to wait till turn 3, which doesn't feel nice. But with this detachment, we're getting it straight up. Breaches are a massive winner of this detachment, and there is a full breacher build that I have done, and the list looks scary. Absolutely scary. I cannot wait to run it. All right, the next one is the Crisis Fire Knife team, and this is for both the plasma and for the missile pods. Now, again, I'm going to be talking about the AP and the +2 to strength. And I know I'm banging on about one particular part of the auxiliary card, but you've got to understand, in Cao Yon, most of my CP expenditure was on like coordinate to engage and combat embarkation, or sometimes photon grenades, because not a lot of the stratagems were especially useful, and I wasn't using them until halfway through the game. And if I'm playing well enough, usually I can take an enormous chunk out of somebody's army in the first 2 turns. It's just the nature of running things like massive speed with the Devilfish and the Breach combo inside, having good long-range fire. If they poke their head out to get you, you have a Hammerhead roll up and just send it back into them and kill something more than likely. And so I was finding that a lot of the stratagems, I would only really use 1 or 2 stratagems, and talk to any competitive player, they very rarely use everything that's in their index. There's a key few that are very, very potent, and that's where they try and save their CP for, and it's going to be no different in auxiliary card. The reason that I say that this is a big deal is that the AP and the +2 to strength is really, really big for the Fire Knives, either taking plasma or missiles, or having a unit of each. Now, the reason for this is that plasma was in a little bit of a weird place, and you weren't seeing people take it a ton, because strength 8 is kind of a weird breakpoint. You can't go into vehicles, but you're overkilling like basic Marines or whatever. The AP3 meant that a lot of the stuff that didn't have an invuln was still getting an armor save, because you just weren't stripping that away. And if you think it's not a big deal to give someone a 6-up or a 5-up armor save, you haven't played the game enough, because when they roll that, it feels like absolute garbage. Not to mention that they've only got 6 shots in this unit. And yes, you'll have a commander with them, more than likely, but 6 shots from the unit, every single one counts. You want to make sure that when it goes through it, or when it gets to the save point, that it is doing as much as possible. Well, now we have something that can put those plasma onto strength 10, which any of the basic transports in the game, like Devilfish, they have to worry about, because you're wounding on 3s. Any of the heavier tanks, like our Skyrays or our Hammerheads, we're now wounding them on 4s. That is really, really, really good. And on top of that, there's another reason for this unit being quite potent, and that is because of the transponder lock module. Being able to bring these guys down turn 1, guaranteeing that you're in range, because you only need to be outside of 9, Kroot are very easy to position. Like, extremely easy to position. Again, Kroot hounds can do this. Let me just hover over that. You see the Kroot hounds in there? You see the fast stalkers, which if you go first, you got a fast stalker unit screening out the center anyway. They're going to be in range of this. And notice that it says this unit must be set up within 12 of one or more units. Within, not wholly within. So, let me go over to TTS. All right, so back to this example game. I've got a hammerhead just in here, which is safe behind the wall, touching the objective, and my opponent's already guaranteed the Sky Ray doesn't have the movement to get around here. That hammerhead's safe, right? Right? Well, no. My Kroot hounds, which I rolled a 5 for the advance roll, are going to go 17 and be up here. If I can get a Kroot character in range of them, cool. I also give them OC, but that doesn't really matter. What does matter is that now I've put a little 12-inch bubble on my back Kroot hound. And as long as I am outside of 9 of this hammerhead, I can have within 18 inches to be able to shoot him. So I've now got a fire knife unit, which is outside of his 9, is within 12 of the Kroot unit. They're getting the extra AP, which means that instead of AP 3 and this thing saving on a 6-up, it's AP 4 and they don't get anything. And all of that just from a Kroot hound unit that moves 12. If it starts within range of a Kroot infantry, it has innate advance and charge. And I've kept this Kroot hound unit clumped up. I can even be cheekier. If I've got longer range, I can measure the extremity of the 18, which is like out here. So I can actually string my Kroot hounds like this and have the bubble a little bit further back. I can have my fire knife unit a little more safe from their bases. I can see him and I can shoot him, but now I'm behind the building. And so any retaliatory fire coming down here can't get them because they can't draw past that base. So I've used my Kroot hound unit in the best way possible to get shots down on him, get +2 strength. I'm wounding him on 4s, and that hammerhead now has to worry about getting completely pumped out because I've only got 14 wounds on that tank. That means that like 3 of these plasma shots go through, and that's 9 damage. He's down to 5 wounds remaining. So even if this unit doesn't fully kill him, and it likely will because they'll get full rerolls to hit, and then half of their shots will go through, that's 9 shots, at least 5 of them are going through, and then you've got the cyclic. And this is against one of the tougher targets that these guys might want to shoot at. Before, you'd be wounding on 5s, and you wouldn't even be able to be here turn 1. Which means that this plasma unit loses a lot of value and you'd have to be staged up somewhere behind here and hope that he puts a tank on there and move up here and whatever. What I'm getting at is not that this is just like a surefire all the time you get whatever, but as I said in my last video, 25 points to have mind games against your opponent and they know you can come down anywhere. Because you've got Kroot all over the board and you can spread them out. Look at the 12-inch bubble if I do this. This is up one side of the board, and so most of it's getting taken up here, but look how far away they can drop if I go first. They can just come down in the center. And because it's within, I can have my boys strung out. Look out, star sides. Get out of here. I can have my boys strung out like this, going that way. I can even do max coherency because it is within 12 inches of a Kroot unit. Look at that. From that side of the board, that is where the extremity of my unit is. That's where the model is. 12 inches. And now this guy's holding this objective on the other side. And I can fire all down these lines or fire one dude down there. Obviously, like, you might not want to do that. But what I'm talking about is options. Things that you can do to solve problems. Look at how ridiculous this coverage is. On the first turn, your movement phase. Insane. Absolutely insane. Now, the other part of the fire knife suits that I just wanted to talk about real quick, all of the same stuff, but you've got the missile pods, which go to AP2, and you can bump to Strength 8 with no Kroot or Vespid around them, or Strength 9, which both are relevant breakpoints to go into things like basic transports, or go to Strength 8 so you can reasonably threaten things like Dreadknights. Anything at that T8 margin, and there is a lot of stuff, missile pods then start punching up in a way that they can't against any other targets. And having them at AP2 with ignore cover is such a scary breakpoint for a lot of different things. All right, next one that I want to talk about is the Crisis Starsides. Again, burst cannons, Tau Flamers. If they are on, and like burst cannons being a strength 5 is already a good strength breakpoint. The problem that they had previously, before Starsides became a thing and we had the old 6 crisis suits, we were taking cyclics because AP2 is amazing. Damage 2 is amazing. One less shot for that profile was insane. Now look at it, you've got Starsides that fire at their preferred target, which is non-monster, non-vehicles. That is bikers, that is mounted, that is beasts, that's swarms, that's infantry, that's all of those different things. As long as it's not a monster or a vehicle, you get AP1. That made them pretty good, and people have been favoring Burst Cannon Starsides in Retaliation Carter. Now, you have within range of a Kroot model that has line of sight to them within 9, you then have AP2 burst cannons. And then you can bump the strength by 2 to go to strength 7. Now, these guys are actually candidates, so you don't need Kroot within them, because going to strength 6 is really, really nice against things like, say, Votan going against Custodes, and AP2, again, massed AP2 against things like Custodes makes them very uncomfortable, because then they're on their invulnerable save, and you're wounding them on 3s. That is really, really nice. Or some of the tougher Custodes things, you're wounding on 4s, which is really, really nice. If you have Kroot within range, you're wounding Custodes Terminators on 4s and wounding everything else on 3s. That is not a breakpoint that you can ignore. You're wounding Custodes Bikers on 4s. And they may be back in the meta in a very big way after the changes that they got in conjunction with the new detachment that they got. Then let's talk about Flamers. Strength 6 AP2 Flamers is insane. Even just as an Overwatch threat. 6d6 shots at Strength 4 AP2 damage 1 is not something that any screen wants to fuck with whatsoever. That is a great, great profile. Starsides were a really big winner in this one, just from making their weapons more reliable. Not only in the shooting phase where you can give them strength, but at all times, because if you network your Kroot effectively, someone will start or end their move within 9 of that Kroot unit. And just for reference, I'm saying Kroot, but I mean all of the different Kroot units and Vespid. It's not just one specific thing. All right, the next big winner is the Ghostkeel. Now, the reason for this thing has Lone Up built in. It's a Tau unit. You can have a Ghostkeel, and I'll show this on the board in a little bit. Because of Lone Up, they're very naturally safe. Plus, they can have their base hanging out a little bit to look at a Kroot unit and give them 18-inch Lone Up. This is a match made in heaven, and on top of that, you've got the Cyclic Ion Raker, which is going to be one of the big winners, in my opinion, all of the Cyclic type weapons. Being able to have them on AP3 on the Overcharge profile and Strength 10 for the same reason as the Plasmas. Strength 10 is such a big breakpoint in the current landscape of 10th. You cannot ignore this. 6 shots, very, very reliable. Strength 10, AP3, damage 3 is a great profile for a unit that can keep itself very, very safe. You then also have its Twin Fusion Blasters, which we were taking, Strength 11, which will wound Hammerheads on 3s with Twin Link. Really, really wonderful for them. They facilitate so much of the tabletop rules interactions that we've got in a very simplistic sort of way, and I'll show you. Okay, so you can see here, I've just jammed a Ghostkeel down in the bottom here, and look at the coverage. I've got a 6-inch bubble on him, which is this purple circle here. Look at the coverage. I have a Rampager unit and a Kroot Carnivore unit that I'm covering. Now, yes, somebody could come up and shoot me from here. But turn 1, it's not likely that there are any tanks that are going to be able to do that. And even when they do, I can blank too. So you're actually baiting your opponent a little bit to come out and shoot at something that it can't reasonably kill, as well as all the other layers of stealth and whatever. The big thing I'm worried about with these Kroot Rampagers when I position them here is actually the cross-map fire coming from this side. Now, what it means is that an enemy unit has to be here to be able to shoot them. Again, there's not a lot of enemy units that are going to be able to cover that like full 12 inches and then shoot them down here and get all of their models in range, which is more than 12 inches because they either have to go through the wall, and I don't know a ton of infantry that have that sort of movement and the ability to fire down with something that can threaten rampages. And if it's a vehicle, it's going around the building and then coming down. And there's not a lot of vehicles that have weapons that can threaten them that move greater than 12 with rotations and everything else that they have to do. So now this unit of Rampagers may as well be invulnerable. And I've also got this unit of Kroot Carnivores, which is sticking in my home field, which can only be shot from just here. That is a very, very safe position to be in turn one. It means my opponent doesn't even go for that play. And I've got a Ghostkeel that he doesn't reasonably want to shoot at. And if he does, I've got hammerheads that can walk on here and just light their vehicles up. Not only that, but the reasonably large oval base of the Ghostkeel makes it a natural fit in somewhere and cover off a bunch of different units at one time while not having to sit inside walls to protect itself, because lone op at 12 inches is so powerful. I'm really, really happy the Ghostkeel's got a little bit of an indirect glow up with this. It doesn't mean they're going to jam into every single list, but I think the Ghostkeel is even more of a top of A tier unit for us. Anybody who's been watching me for a while knows of my undying love for Kroot Hounds. It absolutely broke my heart that they had their OC taken away at the start of 10th, and they just didn't seem to find a place in the meta. Well, Kroot Hounds are back in a very big way. These are the cheapest and most effective option to get yourself the AP bonus. Not only do they scout 7, but they move 12 inches, and if they start the command phase within range of a Kroot infantry unit, which is extremely easy to do, and bear in mind, these can be Kroot characters, these can be Kroot Carnivores, Fast Stalkers, whatever, they have the ability to advance and charge. This gives you so many options. 19 inches without an advance on the first turn. With an advance, you could potentially go 25 inches. There is nobody you're not going to get that AP bonus against. And if you can't get the AP bonus, they're probably behind a wall and you weren't going to be shooting at them anyway. These guys, I've jammed triplicate 5 models into a list. If you want to be a real madman, you can go for 30 of them. I don't know that that's strictly necessary. The 10 doesn't bring too much more than the 5, but it does mean your opponent can't shoot at you with ancillary stuff. And if you've got 10 Kroot Hound units, you can pop one over a wall, lose a couple in the fire that comes to them, and then the rest of the unit's safe. Then pop one more over a wall and just kind of keep going in that vein. Kroot Hounds, I'm so glad you're back. I will be painting some of you as Mushu. Absolutely love it. The next big winner is the Kroot Rampagers. And this one I'm really happy about, because when the Kroot Hunting Pack came out, we had the release of our new models. The Rampagers looked awesome, but they just weren't there yet. Now, in Kroot Hunting Pack, there was some play for them, but they just didn't have the lining up of stratagems and stuff that I think that they needed, because the Kroot Hunting Pack, you needed people that were below starting and below half to get the full benefit. Now, what's changed for them? One, being able to have 18-inch lone up on them whenever you set it up is very, very powerful. As you saw on the board, my Rampagers were able to exist behind that building in a very good position to go left and threaten the left side objective, or go through the center and threaten the center objective. That gives you a lot of counterpunch power that we just didn't have before as a melee unit. The other thing is that with good CP economy and good CP discipline, you have the ability to give them advance and charge, auto advance 6, and full rerolls to wound. And it doesn't have to be all 3 of those. You can, if you set them up and stage them correctly, pick the ones that you need to get the maximum value. One of the big problems that I had in the Kroot Hunting Pack is that these guys, while quick on the first turn because the Scout 7 moves 7, 7 inches without advance and charge just didn't feel like it was enough in enough broad scenarios to make them more than a niche useful. And you could really get hard fucked by some of the terrain layouts that are going out there depending on the tournament that you go on. Now, not only having advance and charge, but the recent cost reductions that we got in the data slate just before the last one, as well as that being able to auto advance 6, you've just got overlapping things that with good solid play, or having things like Shadowsun or Ethereal and good CP discipline, as any good player has, you have the ability to really punish your opponent for running up or mispositioning, which Tau with shooting was generally good at, but now they can't just stand right up against a wall, because we will tag them, and at least a couple of models will get the mortals on the charge, and D3 mortal wounds, as well as must take a battle shock test, because that happens in a charge phase. If you battle shock that unit, things like World Eaters can't spend for fight on death. They can't spend for some of the big stratagems that they would use in the fight phase, there is a lot to love with the Kroot Rampagers. Not only that, if you're getting full rerolls to wound and from a lone spear, and this is something that myself and Rain, my rules lawyer from the Discord, have been chatting about a lot. Lone Spear goes into the list when you're taking Rampagers in units of 6 or greater. And by that I mean multiple units, not you can't take them in more than 6 in a single unit. Full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound with 2 combat profiles at 7 attacks per model. That is a lot. I really think that these guys have gotten a glow up. I have used them in a number of my games and they've always felt good. Either they get in and they slam your opponent, or your opponent plays around them to the point that I just get board control and my opponent doesn't realize that that's what's happening in that moment. All right, and then we go to, I've put Skyrays and Hammerheads on here, but these are for specific points. These were already good before, and we were seeing a lot of people taking them. But I want to highlight a specific thing, and that is Seeker missiles. Seeker missiles get such an amazing, and you wouldn't think it, but 1 point of AP takes Seeker missiles from being great to being, oh my god, what am I doing to someone? Because AP4 puts Devilfish style bodies, and there's a lot of them in the game, into you don't get a save. We naturally ignore cover. Not giving them a save increases lethality by more than you would think until you start looking at the maths behind it. As well as that, I have really been favoring things like the Accelerated Burst Cannons. Accelerated Burst Cannons going to AP2 and potentially being Strength 8, and you take 2 of them on a Skyray or a Hammerhead. 8 shots of Strength 8 AP2 damage 1 is something that nobody can ignore. That is really, really great. Having the extra AP on both of these weapon profiles pushes them up to a really, really nice breakpoint that, if you don't believe me, go and play a game against an opponent that's about equal skill to you and see what I mean. The next one is unironically Flyers. I've mentioned that Cyclics were a big winner, and Cyclics are present on both the Razor Shark and the Sun Shark. Now, they won't fit into every list, but I have written one for my chassos that is a 4-flyer list where I've got 2 Razor Sharks, 2 Sun Sharks, and looking at it, it unironically looks good. Now, the reason for that is that the Razor Shark, when it shoots at something that cannot fly, naturally gets +1 to hit. With the ballistic skill modifier from the Greater Good, you've got them hitting on 2s. If you're using a stealth suit unit from that, they're rerolling 1s. Then in the wound portion, spend for +2 strength. I know I've been beating that drum, but I cannot tell you how much of a big deal this is. And having something like Vespid deep strike into where the plane is entering the board is so easy to do, because if the plane can fit there, 5 Vespid can sure as shit fit there. So you're wholly within that Vespid unit, so you get the +2 strength instead of the +1. 8 shots of strength 10 AP3 damage 2 is unironically great shooting. Is really great shooting. From a 170 point platform that's also taken 2 Seeker missiles, which, like I said, were a big winner. This into any vehicle or monster in the game is something they have to be scared of and play around. And you can show up on any board edge and you ignore buildings. And let me say that again, you ignore bases. You have true line of sight. So if I have, in this example with that Hammerhead, I have my Kroot unit, instead of being here to facilitate the crisis suits, I have them just chilling behind the wall here. Sunshark Bomber comes in here, wholly within 6 of the board edge. I can see those Kroot. I can see that Piranha. I can see those Pathfinders. I have a massive firing line that all I need is my guns to be in range, because I've got my Kroot here, and then I have 1 unit of piddly little Kroot hounds up here, maybe on this side of the building, able to see all of this, and I get the AP bonus for them. Or I can shoot at this Hammerhead. And if I'm going into him, you know what? Just for shits and giggles, let's roll it as if it's a Razor Shark. All right, I'm naturally going for Stealth Suit Guiding, all of the trimmings, just as an example. So, 2 Seeker missiles, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, because it's a target that can fly, so I don't get my +1 to hit. Okay, both hit. Both wound, because I'm wounding it on 3s. He doesn't get the benefits of cover, and it's AP4. Hammerhead just takes him. Just goes straight through. He takes 10 damage total. So he's down to 4 wounds remaining. Now I'm going to shoot the 8 shots from the Cyclic. On 3s, re-rolling 1s. Cool, get rid of those. I paid the 1 CP, so I'm on strength 10, so I'm wounding on 4s, re-rolling 1s. Get rid of those. He's got 4 saves at AP3. Okay, he fails all of them because he was on 6s. He takes a further 8 damage. I overkill him by 4 wounds, and I haven't even sent his accelerated burst cannon yet. Now, I know that you can get dice that might not happen, but that was Jay rolling those dice. I am kind of in my community famous for having the worst fucking dice in existence. And I was able to kill that hammerhead with a 170-point model that walked on and had the option of shooting all this stuff down there. And you could build a list with 4 of them. And the Sun Sharks do mortals as they fly over people, which is pretty cool. Throw into the mix that you're taking stealth suits anyway because they're amazing guiders. A lot of people forget about their homing beacon, which is silly because if you've got Sun Shark bombers that can rapid ingress turn 2 and then turn 3, you have the ability to fly over units as they've set up onto the board. It's at the end of your opponent's movement phase, you can see where they are. You guarantee you're going to be able to fly over them on your turn, get those mortal wounds off, and then hit them with your 2 twin ion rifles. So it's 6 shots at the same profile that I just sent before. So only 2 less shots, 2 seeker missiles, and a twin missile pod. You get a free grenade stratagem from each flyer that flies over something, and you get to then shoot with this unit. The flyers, I think, were big winners from this, and I'm going to be testing these very, very heavily because the additional AP helps every single one of those guns. Accelerated burst cannon, strength 8, AP2, damage 1, like I was talking about with the Sky-Ray. The Sun Shark bomber, twin missile pod, strength 9, AP2, damage 2, with full rerolls to wound. That is not a profile that anybody can fuck around with because then they're going to find out. And that's everything that I've got to say for this video about the big winners and losers. There were so many more flow-on effects. I don't think I could make a video which is concise enough to keep people's attention, but there are so many more. So if there are some that you've seen that you really want to shout out, put them down in the comments. While you're down there, hit subscribe. If you're watching this, it's likely right before our Christmas stream tomorrow. We are doing a very special Pantheon stream where we're going to get on, open up our presents, Chelsea, Mushu, and I. We're going to have some thanks for our supporters. We're going to have a little bit of a yap. And then afterwards, I'm going to get on to a second stream and I'm going to build you live on stream 3 starter lists that you can use as a very, very special thank you to all of our supporters, all of our viewers, all of our lurkers for a wonderful year from my family to yours. I know that in the last few days, there's been a little bit of toxicity rising in our community as people have some very heated views and opinions and start attacking each other as a result of disagreeing. But genuinely, this detachment has me really, really excited. I've been list building more than I have maybe throughout all of 10th. And I genuinely think that this is one of the strongest detachments that we have access to, with the rule that when you put a little bit of practice into it, actually isn't that hard to access. It just takes a few reps and it feels really good. So let me know what you think. And as always, in the comments, be kind to each other. Thank you very much to all of my patrons who make all of my videos possible. If you would like to join them, as well as join the community in the Discord, you can do so from $5 US a month. There are plenty of tiers for you to look at if you'd like to get access to coaching. Head to links in the description, patreon.com/Pantheon Studios Australia or YouTube membership. Both will get you access to the Discord for life. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Oh.